I may not have as many subscribers as PewDiePie or T-Series, but I got a lot of reactions, live reactions, from the people around me regarding my last video on the use of cell phone in classes.
When I never felt bad, come on, yeah.
I had a few people either send me messages on Facebook or tell me to my face that, we should not allow cell phones in classrooms because they're a distraction. They cause distractions. And I wholeheartedly disagree. Let me be clear. I recognize that there is an addiction problem, but I'm not here to talk about that. That would take like several videos to talk about, and there's something psychological about it, brain functions, and I'm not qualified to talk about that. And I do recognize that there's a lot of illicit behaviors that are done with cell phones in class that involve cyberbullying and harassment, and that needs to be curtailed, that needs to be stopped immediately. But to say that the cell phone is the cause of the distractions, I disagree passionately, strongly. People can't be more wrong about that, because people have been distracted before the existence of cell phones. And I'm here to list 5 things that cause distractions and have nothing to do with technology. Number 1, books. It's fun to see the resurgence of books and reading and kids being passionate about reading. It has happened a few times over the past few years where I had to say, honey, please put away the book. It's as an educator, especially as someone who's not necessarily the most inclined into books. Like I don't consider myself an avid reader. That's my husband and my daughter. But like I'm happy to see that kids are reading, and even if it's not a novel or a comic book or a graphic novel, sometimes you can be distracted by other content in your workbook that you find perhaps more meaningful to you and more interesting to you than the stuff that is in front of you right now. Books can be a distraction, and we haven't spoken about banning books. Oh, that's another discussion. Oh. Number 2, pencils. This is evil. And I'm not talking evil in like a stabby, shanky sort of way. No. I clearly remember an entire year of my university career spent scribbling really bad Gothic poetry with one of these things. I know kids who doodle on a regular basis. They write love poems, they write love letters, they use these still. Number 3, your classmates. When there's one bored kid, there's bound to be another bored kid. If you tell me that in the world of technology, bored kids don't exist, yeah, they still do, whether they have technology in their hands or not. The distractions are there, and it's not necessarily because of a piece of metal and plastic. It's the buddy sitting next to them telling them stories about what happened the night before. So yeah, classmates, huge source of distraction. Number 4, your mind. I'm including in that fatigue. I'm including in that positive thoughts, negative thoughts. Your mind is a huge source of distraction. You can have a person who looks like they're paying attention, but they're not. I was often like that. I would stare out the window into emptiness, and my mind would just go to another world. You don't need to have a cell phone for that to happen. And as a high school teacher, fatigue is a huge problem among my students because many of them work. They work part-time, and they work late at night. And 5, finally, other work. How many students in class are tackling other work at the same time? They bring in their math assignments, they bring in their English assignments, they're bringing in their science assignments. They're trying to catch up on work, probably linked to the fact that they were working the night before and they didn't have time to finish. And maybe they find French class easier, so they're trying to multitask. Big mistake, but it does happen. So once again, not the cell phone, and still very much a distraction. So all this to say, those who are trying to ban cell phones from classes, you're not really addressing the true problem. Instead of trying to eliminate those things that look to us as distractions, we might need to look within the mind of the student to find out why they're being distracted, because distraction exists. It happens to even adult learners. It exists. We get bored. We want something. We want something to give us that dopamine kick, and we're trying to find it any which way we can. But if you're banning cell phones, you're not solving the problem, and that needs to be addressed, in my opinion. It needs to be addressed. There needs to be a bit of self-reflection, and maybe when it happens to me in my classroom, I need to examine what I can do to my own practices to ensure that they don't need to be distracted. For some reason today, every single person around the building has decided to make as much noise as possible, so I apologize for some of the weird ambient sounds that may have occurred during this video. I tried as much as possible to pause when necessary, but if you hear people yelling outside, it's a combination of the adult learners at the vocational trade center next door or the elementary school kids that are upstairs. So yeah, so on that note, Internet, I hope you have an awesome day.